What's up, everyone? I am here talking to the always wonderful Smix. Thanks to Esports Heaven for sponsoring this video. If you're not watching on Esports Heaven, go check out esportsheaven.com. Smix, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good, Zion. I'm having breakfast and a coffee, so things are starting off as well as it could, I guess.
Well, that's good. I mean, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, so,
So they
glad you're eating
say, yeah.
healthy.
Mm.
Um, so, we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff. I hope we have the time to get to everything that I have down. I got a lot of questions from your fans, too, so let's jump in here. I'm not going to ask you anything like, how did you get started in esports, or where did your StarCraft career start, or anything. Let's skip all that fluff. That's already out there, right?
Nice. Nice.
Actually, I watched an interview where you said that that's your least favorite internet question, or interview question to get, so...
It actually became this thing because Rotterdam actually was joking about it every time he saw me because he'd be like, Smixy, I just love seeing those interviews where they ask you how you got into StarCraft and you talk about 2008 when you went to Korea and you saw Brood War and your brother got you into it and all this. And he just like, he had the whole story memorized by that point because it was just the question that was most frequently asked. So it became a joke. But yeah, I'm really glad that's not being asked.
All right, so to start off, though, I mean, we've been trying to schedule this interview for months, but you keep such a busy schedule that it just hasn't been possible until now. And
Yeah.
this, even just this, is such a small break for you because you're headed into E-League on the weekend. So how can you manage so much hard work and traveling? Like, do you ever find it taxing on your health or your mentality?
Yeah, definitely. Around the end of last year, I was doing an event like every weekend for like 10 weeks straight or something. And I'm just gonna be like completely honest here. I was very miserable. I was not healthy. I think I was getting sick like at least every 2 weeks or something. And I think it's just because my body, I don't work out. So like, I don't have much endurance to begin with. So I feel like physically I was just burned out. Like my body was like, can you just fucking lay down? Okay, yeah, can you just lay down and take a break? And then like mentally, I was just like, it just felt like there was like a constant white noise in my head, like uh, a buzzing, and I was so miserable. That being said, of course, it's the ultimate first world problems miserable. I was miserable because I had a lot of work, but I think it just got to a point where I realized when I look at people that travel all the time, where they're literally like some of the casters that I worked with last year in CSGO, they were gone for over 2/3 of the year or something. Like they weren't home. They were only home less than like a third of the year. And that blew my mind because just the end of last year showed to me how it really does affect me quite negatively. Sorry, my cat is eager to get on my mouse pad like she always is. But yeah, definitely I realized I'm not as well suited to handling that as others maybe.
Speaking of E-League, Jason Baker commented on the Our Global Offensive thread that I made to take questions for this interview, and he mentioned that you worked through the major qualifier with wisdom tooth pain, and you were having like a wisdom tooth issue. Can you tell us that story?
So basically I got this thing called pericarditis where basically as your wisdom tooth is like erupting, uh there's like this little space between the tooth and the gum where sometimes food can get stuck in there. And when that happens, it starts to get infected and swells up. And basically, this happened the first time in September, but it happens again, the worst timing, like right before the major qualifiers. So by the time I got to Atlanta, the pain was like really, really bad. So I went to a dentist like first thing, but she like cleaned it out. But in doing so, she was like very, very rough in cleaning it out. And the first thing she said as soon as she was done was, "You're going to need pain medication." So she prescribed me Vicodin, but I don't know anything about Vicodin other than the fact that House pops of Vicodin every episode, multiple times an episode. So that's all I knew about Vicodin. And I didn't know that you were supposed to have food. She didn't tell me anything about how to take it. I guess I was stupid for not asking the pharmacist like how to take it, but I just assumed because the doctor or the dentist hadn't said anything to me that I could just pop it when I need it, right? And lo and behold, the pain got really bad. So I just popped it and I was like, I was taking one every, I think, 4 hours because that's what the dentist said was like the time frame that I could take another one. But I wasn't eating because I was nauseous, and the Vicodin on an empty stomach was not a good idea. And it was making me more nauseous. So I was just so nauseous, and I wasn't eating, and I was just puking incessantly. It was sorry for the TMI, but it was like not good. And by the time like the day one of the E League major qualifier started, I still hadn't really been eating because I couldn't chew on anything. My mouth was really sore. It was like a little bit swollen still. Thankfully, they were kind enough to like provide me with soup the first day, so like I didn't have to chew or anything. But I was in a lot of pain, and then I switched to taking Advil only because the Vicodin was obviously messing me up, and I hadn't realized that I just need to have it on like a full stomach. But too much Advil caused heartburn, so then I couldn't have any coffee or any like acidic anything. So basically, my body went a little bit haywire during the E League major qualifier. But other than that, I think the qualifier itself went great.
So you just returned from E League, which was your first Counter Strike major event, which I think you said in another interview. Some people found kind of surprising that you hadn't done a major at that point. Did you experience any nerves, any additional nerves heading into that particular tournament, or was it just like another event that you just had to prep for you?
I think the first time I was on stage at the Fox Theater, I got really nervous, but after that, I was fine. I don't generally get nerves because of like an audience or anything like that. It's more like the pressure I put on myself. So, in terms of like how my mental state was and things like that, the fact that it was a major and the fact that there was like an audience, that didn't affect me so much. But I think the biggest factor that influenced me was the amount of pressure I was putting on myself to perform and do a good job. I really didn't want to fuck it up. I wanted to make sure that I was living up to the opportunity they had given me. So that really affected me more than nerves or anything like that.
So E League Finals broke the record for most people watching one stream on Twitch, which has to be quite the coup for you as like someone who's working that event and someone who's affiliated with Twitch. Were the people working E League expecting such an incredible result and such incredible viewership?
I don't think that anyone goes into one of these events knowing something like that's going to happen. I think that everyone would love if it does, but you just never know what to expect, right? But we were blessed with one of the best grand finals, if not the closest grand finals we've ever had in CS:GO, especially at a major. A lot of the times, the grand finals at majors tend to be sort of one-sided or a 2-0 or something like that. I think it's been a really long time since we had a 2-1, if I'm not mistaken. So I think having such a close series that went 2-1 and had so many rounds at the end, I think it was like 88. I could be wrong, 83, 88, something like that. It definitely helped. And the storyline between VP and Astralis being such a great storyline as well, that helped so, so much. And I think that's why we had the viewership that we did.
As the tournament was going on, did you have any surprise results or any major upsets in your mind that happened?
Honestly, the biggest result that had the most impact on me was, and this might be sort of like a weird answer to this question, but it was seeing Astralis not choke. And I know that sounds really bad, but seeing the progress they made as a team to be more mentally resilient and actually overcome this huge mental obstacle that they had had at every single major was so amazing to see, because it's one thing for a team to have a problem and to repeatedly face that problem and repeatedly succumb, but it is quite the other to see that same team with slight roster changes and a sports psychologist, but still uh, be able to work on that and actually make it happen when it matters most. There were so many times in the grand finals and even in the semis and quarterfinals where the previous iterations of the same team would have definitely choked and not been able to move forward and win. But with this team, you could totally see just the progress that they've made as a team together, playing together, believing in each other, as well as just mentally staying calm. And that was so cool to see, to actually see them produce that result and show the progress they've made. That was just so cool. So as a host, that was such an honor to witness.
So, like you said, you're a pretty self-critical person. You've said that at numerous points in the past as well. Is that still a big hurdle for you, or have you really like learned how to deal with that? Is there a strategy that you use, or are you like focusing more on your successes now as a host? Like, how are you dealing with that?
I'm still very hard on myself, and it's still something I should probably maybe not do as much because it does affect me. So for example, a typical instance that could happen at an event is, let's say I just got off stage and I just made a slight slip up or, misspoke or something, right? And of course, even if to a viewer it's something small that they may forget about in like 5 or 10 minutes, to me it's something that I know I did and that I'm very upset about because to me that's unacceptable. So I definitely tend to kind of dwell on it for at least, I don't know, like a small length of time. But I've gotten to a point where the way I deal with it now is for that small length of time, I will vent a lot. I will whine and yell at myself and be like, Sue, you're so stupid. You're so fucking stupid. So like it's very common to see me in the green room just yelling at myself like that. Like, you're so fucking stupid. What the fuck? And then of course the other talent will be like, Sue, you're fine. Just relax. And I'm like, I'm so stupid. Yeah, and that's very common. But then after like, let's say, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, I'll be fine. I'll be like, all right, thanks for listening to that. I'm done. And then I'm ready to move on and like forget about it. But I definitely do think that I need to get a little bit better at not yelling at myself so much because I just get so frustrated when I know that I can do better, right? I'm like my own Asian tiger mom.
So, pulling us back a little bit more into the past, let's talk a little bit about your roots. You used to do a fair bit of vocal work, singing StarCraft 2 parody songs and covering some Korean songs on like Tumblr. And you're really good. Like, were you formally trained in voice work or anything like that?
That's so funny. No, not at all. And I'm just gonna be super blunt here, okay? Anyone who actually sings or like has been trained that listens to me will probably cringe because I'm not saying I'm bad by any means. I think that I'm the level of singing where like if you and I went to karaoke and I sang a song, you'd be like, "Oh, damn, Sue, you're pretty good." Like, especially if you were like drunk, you'd be like, "Damn, Sue, you're fucking amazing." But that being said, I am not the kind of good where like I can go on American Idol and like wow the judges like I'm so technically amazing. Not to get into like too much technical terms, but definitely not that great of a singer. That being said, it was just a hobby of mine. Back in the day, I used to love recording because I loved singing, even though I wasn't like the best at it. I enjoyed it. So when StarCraft 2 parodies started to become a thing and Tempo was doing his thing and creating amazing songs, I was like, oh, let me try to do this. Regrets.
No,
Massive regrets. So
no, dude.
embarrassing.
Dude, I was listening to like when I was doing my research for this, like every day I'd throw on like a Smix song in the background. And, like,
What?
yes, no, they're all really good.
I'm dead. Literally, I'm dead.
I
Oh my god.
I really
You know
like
my
Taylor
my
Swift
my
and Carly Rae
freaking
Jepsen, man.
oh my god. My freaking Asian mother who loves bragging about me. Apparently, she's been going around like to anybody who will listen to her, be like, "Oh, this is my daughter. Listen to her sing." And she plays fucking Gigi Maybe for them. These poor fucking people don't give a shit. They don't want to listen to me sing. Why is my mom inflicting this on them? I literally I looked her in the eye and I was like, Mom, if you love me, you will never, ever do that again. Ever. Okay? And she was like, okay. And I was like, no, promise me. Promise me. Oh, God.
Dude, all I
All
can
right.
say is that I was walking around all last night with Gigi maybe exactly stuck in my head, so I don't know,
Oh,
man.
God. All right. Well, I don't know what to say, dude. I hope you enjoyed it.
Do you still sing? As a
Uh,
hobby at all, like any capacity?
no, I don't. But I still like doing it. Like if I sometimes when I'm playing games and stuff, I'll just like be singing to something, or if I'm in my room alone or something, I'll be singing. I don't know. I like singing to myself a lot. Um, And I love going karaoke. That's my jam. But I haven't like officially recorded anything in about 3 years, maybe.
Would you be open to like an HD re-recording of some of your StarCraft 2 parody songs, maybe? Serious
I don't
question.
know, dude. I would, as of now, have no incentive to do so because that's like something I did that I'm still like kind of embarrassed by. Like, okay, I say that and people will be like, "You're what? How could you be embarrassed? You're the one that fucking recorded it, you dumb bitch." But and they'll have a point because I am being a dumb bitch by being embarrassed by something I put on the internet myself. But I don't know. It's still embarrassing. I don't know. I would need to like have a sudden bubble of inspiration or something, which currently I do not have. So we'll see.
You were the voice of SC2 Gears, which was an amazing program. You obviously mentioned doing songs with tempo and suspense back in the day. How did those collaborative projects so early in StarCraft 2's life come to be? How were people reaching out to people and content creators at that point?
Dude, it was teamliquid.net. Because back then, it's crazy because now everything's just Reddit, right? Back then, it was like everything was on Team Liquid. I was on Team Liquid literally 24/7. If you wanted to do a collaboration, you would just DM me and then we would take it from there. And I think with Tempo, I can't even remember who reached out to who first. I think I saw his work and I was so impressed by how talented he was. And I think I probably left a comment like, "Oh my God, you're so talented. I would love to collab with you." I don't know, probably something like something stupid like that. And then I think the favorite my favorite collaboration I ever did with him was the um, Dan song that we did, the Eminem Stan parody. I loved that one. And that's because I didn't really need to sing. It was like a whisper singing, which is easy.
Speaking of kind of reaching out to people on TL, you like your job started like everybody knows at this point from Team Liquid presence, but the way that you were hired for IPL3 was that Kennegat, who was an admin of TL at the time, just like recommended you for the position, right? So just
Yeah.
like from personal curiosity, after mentioning collaborating from TL threads, did IPL contact you through Team Liquid?
So what happened was there was a girl named Sumi who was working with IPL at the time to try to get like translators and help, I guess. And she was already good friends with some of the guys at TL, including Kennegat. So she was asking him for advice, like, "Hey, we need live translators. Can you think of anyone?" And so that's why he was like, "Oh, well, we have Smix." Um, so that's kind of how it happened. It wasn't like IPL as an org, I think, went to TL as an org. It was like two people who like knew each other, just like asking each other for help.
You initially worked primarily as a translator for these events alongside someone who's performing the role of host, and later obviously you've transitioned to kind of fill both of those roles. So how did that transition come about?
So in 2013, I had never done a DreamHack yet. And DreamHack asked me if I wanted to host DreamHack Valencia, which was in July. And I had never hosted before, so they were putting a lot of faith in me. Um, but at the time, like Sean Apollo was working with them, and he had been hinting that like he was gonna push for it, and he like thought it could be good. And I think Adebisi was the observer at the time because back before he became a DreamHack guy, he was the observer, like the original Funka, I guess. Um, and yeah, that's how it started. DreamHack just thought that I could do both, and I'm not gonna lie, for a long time I sucked dick, but I'm always so thankful to DreamHack because they like never lost faith and they like believed that I would one day be better. God, they're such nice people.
Have you ever received any formal teaching or training in public speaking or hosting during your time
Mm,
period when you were coming up, or did you have like a mentor who was teaching you things, anything like that?
I didn't have any like formal classes or anything like that, but I did have a couple people that were helping me like incessantly. Like I mentioned this in earlier interviews because I was like so thankful. But back in like 2013, 2014, when it was really, really the beginning of my hosting, and I just had no idea what I was doing and didn't know the key things I should focus on. There were a lot of people that just told me little things that helped a lot. And the first person that I'm always going to name is Apollo because he just went like above and beyond. And of course, that is also because he was at every tournament that I ever worked at. So it just happened naturally that he would help. But that being said, there were also other people that were at these tournaments that didn't help, and that's totally fine. They didn't need to. Paulo didn't need to either, but he always just was looking out for me and giving me advice, teaching me how to frame my questions, how to go in with the like what mindset to have in terms of first question to last question, what things I should focus on, just everything. Not even just that, but just how I should present a question, delivery, like literally every single part of my hosting. He had a little bit of advice for all of it because I was such a little noob. I was like this hungry sponge and such a huge noob, and I was like, please, senpai. Other people that helped me back in, I'm thinking late 2013, when I was doing events with like Red Eye. Red Eye helped me a lot. Kim Fan from Blizzard helped me a ton. I got really close with her over the years, and she always had really great advice for me too. Some other people that I think really, really helped me, not just in terms of giving me advice on how to do better, but just like helped me as a person along the way. Rachel, who was there at the first event I ever hosted, you guys should know who she is. She's kind of everywhere. Rachel Salter, she was at DreamHack Valencia, and this girl has seen me through everything. She's seen me cry like more times than I can even count. She's seen me cry for like every single reason, but she was just there for me like an older sister, and I respect her so much, not just because of the work that she does, but also because she's just such a good person, and she's just always there. And she's been there from literally the beginning of my hosting journey to where I am now. She's been there along the way to not just give me advice in terms of the professional work that I do, but just as just as a human being as well. So I'm just eternally thankful to her. Another girl that was there for me even before I started hosting was Susie. She was there for my first live translating event. And she's also someone I talked to even before I live translated. So it's been really, really interesting to kind of grow with her throughout this journey of knowing her and having that relationship with her and growing as someone in esports with that relationship, because that's provided a lot of perspective for me. And she's definitely helped me out a lot of times as well. And then the last person I definitely want to name, not that I'm making a list or anything, but I have to name Will Chobra, as you guys should all know as well. Chobra is like not to turn this into like just compliments thrown everywhere, but not only obviously is he so great at what he does, and that's everything, now he's producing, but he's also an amazing host, talent, everything. He's just such a great friend. And when I say that, earlier I mentioned how I'm really hard on myself, and in the green room, there's a couple of times where I'll be like, oh, Sue, you're so fucking stupid. If Chobra's there, he'll just like look at me and be so calm and be the voice of like reasoning and comfort to like just get me to like calm the fuck down. And he's just so good at that. And like when I was down in LA for BlizzCon, I got dinner with him a few times, and he's just such a great friend and support buddy and everything. He's such a good person. So I love Chobra. I reached out to these guys for help a lot because I don't really have thick skin, and because of that, I wasn't able to like read a Reddit thread and come away from it with just the constructive criticism. I also was really affected by all the like just mean stuff, right? And so I quickly realized I wasn't mentally strong enough to just peruse through that. So I relied on getting objective, constructive criticism from my peers, like the people that I trusted would, be looking out for the best of me in terms of like wanting me to be a better host and do a better job. I relied on them a lot. And I think it is because of these people that I was even able to get this far.
You're represented by CSA, the Cyber Solutions Agency. They represent a number of esports talents. And like I had a list originally, but literally they represent too many big names to even list without feeling like they are leaving something out, Like there's so many people. So how did you come to be represented by CSA?
Well, in early 2014, I decided I wanted to try hosting full-time and streaming. So I was good friends with Rachel already because of DreamHack Valencia, and I talked to her, and it went from there basically. She recommended Andrew, who basically runs CSA, and I talked to Andrew. I had known him already for a while. I trusted him, and since then I've been working with him, and it's been not just a good working relationship, but a good friendship as well. He's a really, really good guy, and I think one of the few really good guys in this esports world. And I feel like he's doing really well for himself now, and I'm just really, really proud of him, and I think he really deserves it.
So, what are the benefits of working with like an agent or an agency in esports as opposed to self-representation?
So basically, there are a lot of times, especially when I first started working at live tournaments, I was not good at negotiating my rate. I did not know what I was worth. I didn't know how much to ask for, and therefore, when I first started working by myself, I severely undersold myself. And that was a classic mistake I think a lot of people make if they're not represented by someone like an agent to know those rates, know what they're worth, and be able to negotiate on their behalf. Another awkward part, if you try to negotiate your own rate, it becomes this weird conversation between you directly with the tournament organizer where they're like, hey, so I'm going to pay you $5. And you're like, I think I want $10. And they're like, $5, we'll see you there. And you're like, oh, okay. But it's like awkward to push harder because a lot of times you're friends with the tournament organizer and it's just weird. When you have an agent, they can be the bad cop. They can be like, hey, no, we're not going to, she's not going to do this unless you give $10. Um, and that makes it so much easier because not only do they deal with that beginning part with the negotiations, um, they also deal with the invoice afterwards, taking care of all of that so that you don't need to worry about reaching out to the tournament to get paid. Like all of that is taken care of for you, and then the check just arrives in the mail. It's just made it so much easier, and also you get additional gigs that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise because now that CSA has become notable, a lot of times people will come directly to CSA and be like, "Hey, we have this event coming up. Can you recommend some? We need like two hosts. Who do you recommend?" And then like CSA will offer like a portfolio of their talent, and then they'll choose. So a lot of times there's a couple events I did last year that I would not have been able to do had I been solo. I got those events because I was part of CSA. So
How much prep time is required to work an event as a host? Like, how much time do you put into preparing for any given event?
so it depends. If it's an event where I haven't followed like the storylines for a while, I do a lot more prep. So for example, I'm trying to think of the last event where so let's say it was an NA CSGO tournament and I wasn't as up to date on certain NA teams because I just haven't been following their storylines. I always like to reach out to someone that knows the NA scene really well, whether it's like Moses or like an NA CS player that I'm friends with. I'll always reach out to them in advance and have like a Skype call with them where I just basically talk to them about every single team that's going to be at the event, walk through their best maps, walk through their storyline, if there's a star player, things like that. If it's an event where even if it's a big event, but I've been following the storylines for a while, I don't need to do as much prep. But during the event itself, I'll always be checking things like, let's say it's Virtus Pro versus Fnatic. I'll be looking up their previous match history, when the last time they faced each other was, if it was with their current full rosters, certain maps that they are maybe not performing as well on, things like this. There's a lot that I do during the event as well as prior, and I would even say that the prep that I'm doing during the event is more important.
So currently, Brood War is experiencing a pretty big resurgence of popularity, some might say, in South Korea. As an old school Brood War fan, have you jumped on that Brood War hype train?
First of all, I think that's fucking amazing. I will always, to the day I die, love that game. That game changed my life, literally. I wouldn't have be able to do anything that I've done so far if it hadn't been for the fact that I got into Brood War. That being said, a lot of times the timing isn't so great for me. So I think what I'm going to do, I prefer to do this anyway. I like to just go back and watch everything at once and like binge watch it. So I think that's what I'm going to do. But I think that's really, really cool. It's so crazy to see like old rivalries facing each other like Flash and Jaedong. Who thought that is something that we were going to see again? That's fucking amazing, right? Yeah. Amazing.
On a much more depressing note, when the news broke that Pro League was coming to an end and that almost all the Korean teams were going to close their StarCraft 2 rosters, as an old Brood War fan, I mean, that must have been pretty hard for you to hear. How did that hit you?
It just felt like the end of an era. I have so many good memories when it comes to Pro League. I Pro League was something I used to watch. I used to watch every single game in Pro League back in 2009. Like, I don't know if anyone watching this will remember the games from back then, but I would watch every single game. Like, even when the boring teams face each other, like, praise them. But when like Woongjin would face Eastro, and that was a game no one cared about because they weren't like the star teams at the time, I would watch every single match because I was that obsessed with Pro League. And so to see Pro League die, I think it was definitely heartbreaking for a lot of people, myself included, just because Pro League meant so much for so many people. I think it changed their lives for a lot of people as well. Um, and I think more than anything, I just felt like it indicated how things have really changed in terms of the dynamic of games and their popularity and um, what they're focusing on over there. Uh, that being said, I'm still optimistic. There are still tournaments going on where the caliber of games is absolutely fantastic. I still think that we're seeing great StarCraft games now, so I don't want to be pessimistic about it. I'm just going to choose to focus on the positives.
So it didn't change anything about your mentality, like the tournament that had lasted basically forever, closing down. It didn't really like affect you at the end of the day. Just kind of take it in stride.
I don't want to say it didn't affect me because obviously when the news was released, I think everybody was in a bit of shock. That being said, I feel like it wasn't something that surprised me just because of the stuff that I had been hearing from players and rumors that had been going around. So I wasn't quite surprised. It was still shocking because of how big of a deal it was. But that being said, I don't, because there are so many people that are being depressing about the state of StarCraft and how is it doing. I don't want to be one of those people that add on and say, oh, this is just another sign of dark and gloom in our horizon. I really dislike that a lot. I think there's still so much we can be happy about and so much, there's just still so much great StarCraft going on. So I think it's pointless to focus on the negatives, and we should just, this is even more of a reason we should highlight the great things that are going on, in my opinion.
With fewer SC2 events planned in 2017 than there were in 2016, are you exploring maybe working with any other games, or are you looking at doing more Counter-Strike events than you have in the past? Do you have any altering plans for this year?
So this is the year where I really want to only do the events that I really want to do. I think last year showed me that when I'm stretched thin like that, because I was doing so many, I'm not a happy person. So I really want to focus on just doing what I want. And the two games that I love right now are StarCraft and CSGO. So those are the games that I want to focus on. That being said, uh, it's crazy because CSGO is so saturated. There were 3 events that I said no to in January alone because I was doing the major, so I wanted to focus on the major. Um, so I think just because of the sheer saturation of CSGO, I will just naturally be doing more CSGO events because there's just so much more of it. That being said, I always try to say yes to every StarCraft event that asks me, unless there is some scheduling conflict or something like that. So I don't know. We'll see. As of now, I don't have plans to do any other games unless it's something that I genuinely think I'll enjoy and a game that I like. But again, I don't see that happening because the games that I really like to follow in terms of esports are CS:GO and StarCraft.
I've seen some people compare the current Counter-Strike Global Offensive scene to StarCraft 2 scene circa like 2012. I believe Adabisi remarked on Twitter a while ago now that CSGO was fulfilling a lot of the dreams that StarCraft 2 had initially put forward in 2012. As someone who's been deeply involved with both of those scenes through their rise in popularity, do you think that there are any parallels between the two esports?
Oh, definitely. I remember StarCraft 2 back in that time frame around 2012, 2011. StarCraft 2 was super saturated. I know that it's very different now, but anyone who was around back then knows there was a point where there was a tournament going on so often. It became, they happened so often that a lot of people said that it was too much, that it was basically sort of almost diluting the interest of people watching because there was just too much going on and it was hard to really ascertain like which tournament was the one that you should pay attention to. Um, and I think that we're seeing a similar sort of thing in CSGO where there's just so much going on, aside from the huge majors and maybe like the DreamHack Masters events. It's when you have a lot of other events sprinkled in literally every weekend of the year, it's hard to pay attention to which one you should be following, unless you have a favorite team that's playing there. So I think in that regard, it is very similar. But I would say a difference is the money involved. The money involved in CS:GO is like absolutely massive. The amount of money these players are making is like exponentially more than what StarCraft 2 players were making back in its heyday. So I would say that's a massive difference, mainly because if you look at the players that were at the top of StarCraft 2 back at its prime, I don't know what they're doing now, a lot of them. Some of them, like the Korean ones, they moved on to become coaches and this and that. You know, I think Idra, I think, is going to school. I don't know what a lot of them are doing, but with the money that some of these CSGO players are making, if they're smart, then that's actually money that can really, really help them for the rest of their lives at a very impactful level. They're making a lot of money. Let's just put it that way. It's not in that sense. It's very not comparable. So I would say that's a big, big, big difference to point out.
I take some questions from Twitter, and I took some questions from Reddit this time around. So fan questions, here we go. From our StarCraft user, the Red Viper asks, what was the most memorable moment in your esports career?
So prior to the major, I would have probably said it was when either Solar or 4GG won, respectively. It was DreamHack Stockholm 2014 and DreamHack Winter 2014. But now I think it's going to be when Astralis won the major, and not because, it was the major and that's the only reason why, but it was because I don't think I've ever witnessed a final come as close as it did. And just seeing Astralis overcome all the problems they had previously. And then the final moment when they won, they were actually all crying. And I was on stage and my producer was telling me to go and do the interview, but I was like choking back tears because it was so emotional. And then finally I went up there and they're still all crying and I'm still like trying my best to like hold the tears back. And I know that sounds super girly, but I think there's nothing more beautiful than seeing someone or people that have been working really hard for a goal finally reach it, and to see that moment hit them when they can't even believe it themselves and they're feeling it in that moment that they finally done it, all their hard work has paid off. In my opinion, there's nothing more beautiful and so awesome to watch. So to me, it is when Astralis won the E-League major.
I'm not a CS:GO fan at all, but I tuned into this like the final like couple rounds of this major because Twitter was lit and I knew that we had this. And I gotta say, that's the esport moment that everybody else has to try and beat because it was a moment.
Yeah.
Toss Boy from our StarCraft asks, who is your favorite player? And I'm gonna branch that out to be both StarCraft and Counter-Strike. Do you have a favorite player in each scene?
No, I don't have a favorite player. And I know that people will be like, oh, that's such a politically correct answer. But I really, really don't. I think, and I just think this is a natural byproduct of being a host that I don't have a favorite player because my favorite player is the player that'll create the best storyline for the tournament. And that sounds really selfish, but I just want what's going to be the coolest story. That being said, I do have players that I personally like because they're just really nice, awesome people every time I interact with them, but I don't think that's what this question meant, so.
A few people asked about how you deal with some of the sexism and the negative attention that you get from the gaming community as a woman working in esports. And, I mean, even on the Reddit threads that I posted, there were some pretty idiotic comments. So what are your views on that kind of thing?
I think every female that works in esports will probably have a different answer to this, maybe. But personally, I choose not to really focus on it. I don't get offended by comments about my looks at all. I just don't. I think that if that's what you're choosing to focus on, that's fine. The only comments that do get to me are the ones where they're discrediting sort of the effort I put in or how I got a gig or that I don't deserve this or don't deserve that. Comments that say they prefer other hosts, that's perfectly fine. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Comments that even just say that they just don't like me, that's fine too. I can't be everyone's cup of tea. But comments that are just deliberately like saying that I only got this because, you know, I suck someone's dick. I said this in another interview, and people were like, "Why are you so crude?" I don't know. I think it's because I play too many games where I talk like this. I'm like, "Suck my dick." Sorry, that's so immature, but oh God. But yeah, basically the point is I choose not to focus on that. And I think the something that I've noticed is that I mean, yes, as a female, I do get comments about my looks a lot, inevitable, but so do a lot of players. Especially, I'm not going to name any names, but if a player, let's say, is overweight, Twitch chat it will be talking about that nonstop. If a player on camera has really bad skin problems, Twitch chat is talking about that nonstop. So I think Twitch chat will always be focusing on looks somewhat, especially if it stands out. Obviously, if you're like normal looking, nothing outstanding about you, they won't be talking about your looks. But um, yeah, I think girls will always have their looks talked about. But that being said, I do think it is, I don't know. I do think that the work that I'm doing is also being recognized by the people that actually aren't trolls and stuff. So
Do you think that the general environment of esports and kind of gaming at large has become more friendly, more tolerant towards women since your beginnings in like 2012?
yes, I think that there just are more women working in different aspects of esports, and because there's just more, I think it's definitely on the road of becoming more normalized. Um, that being said, I truly do believe this. I think that if you're working hard and whether in whatever capacity that you're in esports, whether you're a player, whether you're a host or a content creator, whatever you're doing, as long as you're working hard and doing a good job and producing quality content, like I don't know, I don't see why. I mean, yes, there's always going to be trolls, but other than the obvious trolls, like you will be respected. I don't know. That's just what I think. Maybe that's like over maybe that's like overly positive thinking, but I at least personally think that if you are just working hard, that will show. And I would like to just believe that people will see that.
Guitars de Amor asks a few questions, and I'm only going to give him two. What was your favorite event in 2016 to work at?
So for StarCraft, this is like super cliche, but it was BlizzCon. I feel like yeah, there are a lot of events in StarCraft, but something about BlizzCon is just always magical. Um, I don't know. I thought we saw some really interesting storylines with players like a laser that surprised a lot of people by how well he did. We saw some really other surprising results like Solar dropping out really early on when people thought that he'd be one of the favorites to go far in the tournament. I think that it's always really interesting to see the storylines that emerge when it's the pinnacle of the year. It's the WCS Global Finals, and players are pressured at the maximum and just seeing what happens. So I personally felt like the WCS Global playoffs were the highlight for me in terms of StarCraft in 2016. It was just so many interesting things happening left and right, and I don't know. I think you can clearly see how much this game means to these players and how much it means to progress in a tournament, and you can just see it in their eyes. It's just really, really great to see. For CS:GO, I mentioned this tournament earlier, but DreamHack Malmo was so special for me because it really felt like the dream story. NIP, every game they played, especially later on in the tournament, the quarterfinal, semifinal, and grand finals, where it was just so, so close. The games were tooth and nail. And then to the last moment when they finally won and the whole arena just erupted with all these Swedish fans that are diehard NIP fans standing up on their feet and shouting out with their hearts. Like that was absolutely insane to witness the star power of NIP and how much sway they have as hometown favorites. And I know this is cheating, but I have to talk about the major qualifier because it was one of the most stacked qualifiers I think a lot of people had seen in CSGO. And despite it being a qualifier, it felt like a legitimate event almost because of the caliber of teams that were there. There were so many great teams there. Um, so it was just crazy because you saw teams like NIP not qualify for the major, which was the moments that they lost their last game, 16-2. It was just so quiet in the room. I heard the player room that where the other teams were watching the game. It was super quiet over there too. It was a really eerie moment where everybody was so shocked at history happening. NIP not being at a major that was just unheard of. And not just NIP, but other teams. You could see just how much making the major meant to them, especially the last few games every game was so, so close. It got to a point where it almost became heartbreaking every game because I just wanted both teams to advance because they were producing such close, good games that I just felt like they both deserved to be there. But yeah, I felt like the major qualifier was just really, really good, very emotional and tense. So that was extremely memorable for me.
Guitarist Daymore also asks, what are the events that you're most looking forward to in the coming year? And I'm going to split that again, just Counter-Strike and StarCraft 2 separately. Are there any events that are particularly exciting for you? Surely E-League this weekend must be on that list, right?
Yeah, I know this is like a easy answer, but I've never even been at a CS:GO major before. I have always just watched online, and the majors are just so awesome to watch. Like the major that I personally enjoyed watching the most last year was the MLG Columbus major, and it was from the beginning to end. I just enjoyed watching it the entire time. The storylines, again, I always talk about storylines. I can't help it because I work as a host, but the crazy things that happen, the emotions, the way that the players are emotionally reacting to the crowds that are cheering for them, it's just so exhilarating even to watch off of my computer screen. So to know that I'll be there seeing it all happen in person, that's just absolutely amazing. It's the biggest honor I can have. And when it comes to StarCraft, I don't know, dude. If I say BlizzCon, that's also like a cop-out answer, right? I don't wanna speak so soon about StarCraft yet, as it is just January, and a lot of times events aren't announced until like a little bit closer to. So I don't know. All I know is there were a lot of games and I feel like tournaments that really left an impression on me in 2016, and I just hope that in 2017 we can see a lot of great games as well. And that sounds so Kespa Korean of me, but at the end of the day, I just want to see a good StarCraft 2 games, and I think that's what a lot of viewers want as well.
From Twitter, Fear Dragon asks, what are the best tricks that you've learned to get players to open up in your interviews, especially, when you have such a short time frame to do it?
So I've definitely this has been a trial and error process for me because I've definitely messed up where I didn't fully understand which questions would work best for a specific player. I think a lot of times it just comes down to knowing the player that you're interviewing. So, for example, with Neeb, you can really get him to open up if you're asking him strategy level questions, why he made this decision, why did he decide to do this when he saw his opponent doing this, or what did he think or decide to do when he scouted his opponent doing this. He really excels in talking about the game. Some other players like Stefano just fucking wing it because it's Stefano, right? So you really do have to tailor your questions to the player if you want to get the best kind of interview out of them. If you just have like a cut and dry interview for every single player, that'll work sometimes because a lot of players are just used to interviews now and know what kind of questions they're going to get. But that being said, some other players will just not really give you much because, you need to tailor your questions to them. So,
Sure Should I asks what your favorite event of all time is that you've actually worked at, like your favorite thing that you've ever done.
okay. So this is gonna sound weird, but my favorite event that I ever did, probably the first event that I ever did, which was IPL 3, October 2011. And a lot of people are going to be like, what? Why? The fuck? And the reasoning for that is not because the tournament itself had any great storylines, not because what I did was particularly special. It's my favorite because it was the first event that I ever did. And I was just so passionate and excited to do something for the StarCraft 2 community that I remembered I slept like, I don't know, less than 4 hours every single night. Our actual work hours were insanely long because like call time was like super early and we would always end at like 2 or 3 a.m. or some shit. Like I was if you made me do that now, I'd be like a zombie. But like I was just so high off of being excited at my first event. Like it was just so raw and passionate. And whenever I think back to that, I just remember how, despite the fact that my feet were killing me running around, despite the fact that I was on like no sleep, I was just so happy. And that was the event that showed me like, this is what I want to do. This is the world I want to work in. So that's why I named that event as my favorite.
Are there any tips that you can give for the people who are trying to rise up through esports right now, maybe trying to bogart those hosting positions that you're not going to be around for?
The biggest thing I would say is be passionate. Don't try to do something for the wrong reasons. So, you know, if you want to be a host because you want to be famous or something like that, stop. The fuck are you doing, man? You should really only try to do something if you really love it. So the biggest example I can think of, Gillyweed. I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she's an amazing, amazing girl. She's one of the casters for Heroes of the Storm right now. Gillyweed came up to me at an IEM New York in 2013, and she said, "Hey, Smix, I just wanted to ask you if you have any advice for, for someone like me who is, trying to get more involved in the scene." She came up to little old me. What the fuck did I know in 2013? But of course, I tried my best. I was like, just try your hardest. I don't even remember what I said. I was probably just like, try your hardest, keep at it. I don't know, some bullshit advice. I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't even know what I was doing. But all I know is she worked her ass off, and she is one of the hardest working, passionate girls that I know. She consistently produced content through her YouTube channel. And then when Heroes of the Storm came out, she was so passionate about it that she immediately got involved. She started to cast and appear on shows about it and always like playing the game and just being involved really, really directly. And now look at where she is. She's fucking killing it. So all I'll say is it doesn't happen overnight. You just have to keep putting in the work, keep working to improve and get better, consistently get advice and constructive criticism from the people around you. And if you really, really work hard, you're doing a good job, like you'll get there. It just takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. So just keep working hard at it.
That was all I had. Do you have anything that you wanted to talk about? Any things that you wanted to raise or shout outs you wanted to make? Anything like that at all?
I think one last thing I want to say about StarCraft is just a huge thank you to all of you guys that are still tuning in and watching and still passionate about it. That is just so amazing to see. It's because of you guys really that we're all still doing this and being involved. But really, I think it's absolutely amazing. I think that there will always be people that are going to be talking about the stupid, like, I don't know, meme stuff about StarCraft. And that'll probably keep happening, and there's nothing we can do about that. But I think the people that are choosing to be positive and the people that are continually tuning in and watching WCS and watching the players at these different tournaments, continually cheering for their favorite players, that is what keeps all of this going. And not just the people that are watching, but a huge shout outs to the fucking players, man. They're like, oh man, like I think let's just all be really, really blunt here. As a pro gamer in StarCraft, you are not going to be making a fuck ton of money. The players that are still competing and flying out to this tournament in 2017, they really fucking love StarCraft 2. I think that's just so great to see. You can say a lot about StarCraft 2, this and that, but you cannot deny the love that so many people have for the game, and nothing can touch that. And I think that 2017 really, really shows that. All the people that are still involved, all the players that are still playing, it's just so cool to see. So a huge shout out to everybody that is still working their ass off for this game.